In the last episode, we heard about Allison's experience dancing her first milonga since the pandemic lockdown. We recorded a segment before the milonga, and we met after to talk about her experience. When I went to my first milonga since the pandemic, though, we weren't as organized. I was just in the middle of a big move, and Allison was traveling, so we didn't get a chance to record. But that gave us some ideas for the following episode. Often during milongas, we have thoughts and questions that we wish we could talk to someone about, but we often don't have a trusted, experienced person on the other side that we can talk to. But now, because of this podcast, I had a very skilled tangera who I could ask these questions to. So in this episode, I talked with Allison about some of the thoughts and questions I had after my first milonga since the pandemic. We had a lot of fun making this episode, and you hear tidbits like this.
Unfortunately, more people are familiar with it from Rumsfeld, but...
What does she say that about? Well, keep listening and you'll find out in this episode of Let's Talk Tango with Sean and Allison. So, Allison,
Yes.
One of the things that I noticed, and this is something that's very concrete for me because I think about dancing in a very similar way to you, is during the pandemic, I knew that I was going to come back to tango. So I made sure to keep up conditioning and flexibility, especially the parts of my body and the kinds of movement that I knew I would use in tango. So I definitely had the ability to meet the conditioning, the strength and flexibility demands of leading in tango. And honestly, it wasn't that much requirements. It's just really good conditioning, core strength, balance. But the challenge I found for me was coordinating the movements, because in tango, you move in ways that are very unfamiliar or rare in everyday life. So the neurological control wasn't there. Even though afterwards I tried the same things, offsetting my chest with my hips and everything, and I was physically able to do that, it was really hard for me to coordinate all of that, especially with a person that's really close and just having the same neurological patterns to finally control my body. So I'm actually very curious how you felt in your first post-pandemic milonga experience, because you also spent a lot of time keeping up your conditioning, your strength, your flexibility. Did you feel like there were a lot of challenges with that neurological coordination aspect of things? Or do you feel like it was more the flexibility and the strength for you that was more rusty?
Oh man. This is one of those, hard questions, because of course no one wants to admit all of their weaknesses.
I just admitted
here
it.
We are. but if you go, then that's fair enough that I go. Yeah, because man, it was kind of a sobering and humbling, my first milonga experience. And for me, one of the interesting things that I noticed, and I really wanted to take advantage of this. And I was like, my mind was frantically working on how to take advantage of this moment, because I noticed that my body went into the same patterns that it had learned fairly easily. Mm-hmm. However, because my body hadn't done it in a while, those muscles weren't tired, in that moment. So it was like, in some ways, this fresh slate, so that you could, with a really clear eye, pinpoint your problems. So for me, it's this thing that's happening in my left hip. I 2 years ago, when everything kind of got frozen in time, just like that moment in Sleeping Beauty, where everything, the whole kingdom goes to sleep. Yeah. When everything got frozen in time, I was working on it then, and here we are, we're all woken up, and I'm working on it now. So, but the benefit is that, if you have something that you're struggling with, and usually if you have some sort of pain, it's an indication that something is not in alignment or something is not right, and you want to figure out what it is. And so, but here we are, our bodies have been rested because we haven't been wearing our metatarsals down in the same spots that they've been worn down if we had been going out every night. And so so certain parts of the body are refreshed, and it kind of gives it this blank slate, so you can really easily highlight what's going on. But it was frustrating because whatever mechanical thing that I had not yet figured out, I was still needing to figure out,
Mm-hmm.
because no matter how good certain tango teachers are, there's just sometimes it's just kind of hard to pinpoint what is going on, because just like as a scientist, you know, you would know that if there's too many factors, you've got to like control for variables.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's too many variables. Like, is it me or was it him? You know, like, you know, so it's like hard to tell, you know? And so here I am, but I'm like feeling like, I know my left hip feels different than my right hip. Like, now is the time to figure it out. And when I was dancing at that place in DC, I did have a little light bulb moment that I was really grateful for, when I think it was the way I was stepping with my left foot when I was moving clockwise around the guy in this one moment. And I'm like, okay, if I do heel toe just there, like that might be solving it. And so it's like, yeah, I wanted to take advantage, but those moments are so ephemeral. And then in the meantime, I have to dance and do whatever the guy's telling me. So it's not like I can just pause the whole room and just be like, let me work this out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense. You know, that aha moment, I had a very similar feeling, where I don't know if I got better in that particular regard than pre-pandemic, but I was dancing with somebody that I've known for a while, who we were talking, and she was a yoga teacher, so she was much more sensitive to people's tensions in places. And
yeah,
I could just feel when she pointed out something that a part of my shoulder relaxed, and it gave my chest a lot more flexibility. So kind of very similar to you, where because it was so fresh, because the brain wasn't fully engaged in a specific pattern, it was able to form new patterns and was able to form new ways of controlling those muscles.
Yeah. And so, and it's very humbling, and it's very sobering. And speaking of my metatarsals, you know, there was like early on in tango, I had the bad habit of like being so turned in, which a lot of people think is an attractive quality to have, but it's easy to overdo it. Like, some people are naturally, they call it like bow-legged, and some people are naturally like their
so your
ankles
toes
go
are
inwards.
pointed in.
No,
The other way.
no, that's pigeon-toed. No,
Okay.
this is like in ballet, it's thought of as attractive to like have the ankle in an angle, and so your foot is winged out.
Okay.
And so it's more attractive. It's considered more attractive, like I think in multiple dances, than if, for example, like your pinky toes were more like curved down. What's the word I'm looking for? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I actually have the opposite physical habit, because in Japan, growing up, you're trained to sit in a certain way, and that shapes your feet a little bit. And then some of the activities, a lot of traditional Japanese movements, you're gripping the floor, and that kind of makes your feet point either straight or slightly inward with your toes. So the opposite of that, basically.
Okay. Right. And it's like ankle. Yeah, it's so not just like how much of a V your feet make, but then like which are your ankles rotated inwards or outwards. And so the thing is, it's like, because it's thought of as the better quality, oftentimes like it won't be corrected, but like mine were too far in. And so for the longest time, whenever I get a pedicure, I tell the person doing the pedicure, like don't touch me here and don't touch me here, like on like my two metatarsals, like, because like the nerve, it was just like all to hell, you know. It was bad. And the other day I got a pedicure and I forgot to tell the person that, but it didn't hurt, and it was like,
maybe
but I kind
dancing.
of missed that pain.
Yeah.
Like, no, I mean, I knew it was dancing, but it was like a bittersweet moment, because it's like, how much has my body changed? You know, I'm like, things were not where I left them. And like, I don't know, I missed the pain. You know, I really did. I did.
Okay.
Yeah. I wanted to address some of the other part of your question that you mentioned about like what was like the biggest challenge with the regaining the muscular control and flexibility and conditioning. So I agree, it's a great post-pandemic question. So dancing, it incorporates all sorts of movements and strength and flexibility together, and it's very limiting to just work on the muscles by themselves. So even though I feel that that's good cross training, eventually you just need to get dance to get better at dancing, which of course was frustrating because we couldn't do that. And also, another thing I noticed is easier for me to be inspired to do the exercises when I'm dancing, because then I can more easily identify which muscles need help because I'm getting feedback from my own body.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really interesting point, and kind of the limit of cross training in a vacuum is your brain needs something to focus on. And weightlifting, they often tell you to put your mind into the part that you're trying to train, because not only are you training your body, your muscles, but you're also training neurological patterns. And if you have a movement or something in mind that you are training for, or you have a part of your body that you're focusing on, that makes your brain, that makes your neurology more keyed in. So exactly like what you said, you can't just cross train in a vacuum. At some point, you have to bring it all together in dancing, and it helps you not just motivationally, but also just neurologically helps you focus on what it is you're trying to get better at.
I love it. Well, hopefully we can both do that a lot in the months to come.
Allison, this one, I think we had a little bit of fun scripting this one as well. So, but my question for you, and I think this is an eternal question, is can one person enjoy a tanda and the other person not at all? Or corollary, can one person not enjoy a tanda at all and the other person enjoy it? So sometimes I feel like there are definitely dances where you feel like a tanda went really well, and then the other person seems to start avoiding you, even though you felt like you were really on music and everybody was in tune. But then there's also corollaries, right, where you feel like the tanda went pretty off the rails and the other person feels totally fine about it and even accepts another invitation later on. And in fact, I had a similar experience, actually, both of them, when I went back for the first time. But the one that really stood out to me was when I went to the Malanga and it was super, super crowded. I spent the entire tanda trying to not crash into people, and I still managed to make some light contact with people. And I just felt super embarrassed and stressed out by the end of the tanda. But then later during the night, that person accepted another invitation from me. So that was, I was really puzzled because I thought this person would probably not want to dance with me for 6 months, as Christina would say. And, that didn't happen. But then on the other side, I was also thinking about this on the train ride back. I've definitely had those experiences where I felt like I was really on top of everything. And I even felt that tango high. But then the person starts to consistently turn me down for a while. So, I'm curious, how common do you think these one-sided tandas? What are some signs and what are some causes of this? Because I'm sure we've both had that kind of experience and we both thought about it.
Well, I mean, Sean, you've asked the age-old question. Was it good for you too?
Always, my dear, always.
But
gonna go get my scotch now.
Yes, you might need some scotch for this conversation, but in all seriousness, yes, this can happen. So, how? Because of course we want to, prevent these situations where two people are on completely different pages. So how does this happen? Well, the first thing that came to my mind was that proverb that it says, you don't know what you don't know. Or there's like 3 levels of knowing, I think. There's stuff you know, stuff you don't know, and stuff you don't know you don't know. And like
the Rumsfeld principle.
Right. It's either a Chinese...
The unknowns.
Right, yeah. It's either the Rumsfeld theory or a Chinese proverb. My aunt says it's a Chinese proverb. I don't know if you've heard this proverb. I thought it was, but because I hate to...
I mean, I grew up in China, but I definitely know that from Rumsfeld.
Right. Unfortunately, more people are familiar with it from Rumsfeld, but unfortunately...
Oh, I just remembered, it's a Confucian saying.
Oh.
It's if you know, then say you know. If you don't know, then admit that you do not know, and that is wisdom.
Ah.
It's the every kid's favorite proverb because it sounds 知之为知之，不知为不知，是知也. It sounds like a bird, right?
Aw, that's cute. Oh my gosh, I like that.
Yeah.
That sounds nice. Well, yes. Well, in this case, I think Confucius was onto something here. And so, because here's the thing, if there's if there's something that you know how to do, that then you'll just do it. But if you don't know how to do
Hmm.
something in tango, like that's the very definition of a blind spot. It's a blind spot because you can't see it. And so my theory is, so I've had dances where I didn't enjoy it, because perhaps the men didn't have the skill or sensitivity to react to my body and me and the music, the things going on,
Hmm.
or maybe they were off the music. And so sometimes they know they're beginners, and this goes into that category of that you don't know. And so those people are
Hmm.
great because they tend to be more humble and they tend to be more gentle, so they don't have as many blind spots because they know they don't know. Um, but as you progress, it would be common to, if you don't know a skill, it's so we keep saying, clearly it is very common to not know that they don't know it. Because
Hmm.
if they knew it, wouldn't they do it? Right? Like if
Yeah.
they knew, yeah.
Exactly.
So if they knew how to step on the beat, they would step on the beat. If they knew how to lead you gently but firmly without like, twisting your spine or like gripping your wrists like a craziness, they would do that. Um, but if they're not even aware of that to change it, then they're not going to be aware of it as a problem. So then they're going to go home and be
Hmm.
like, "Well, why didn't she accept another dance from me? Like everything went well." So I can, because I'm fairly sensitive, like I really try to react and follow many men. So I can make it work. But that doesn't mean
Hmm.
it's super fun for me. But I try hard to make it fun
Hmm.
for them, and if they have a good time, then they'll ask me again.
You are a saint, Allison.
Aw.
You are a saint in my tango pantheon.
Aw. Well, thank you. So in these instances, maybe I just had a smile on my face to be polite, and I'm at that point in my tango journey where I want to take more responsibility for things working, and so I really work hard in all my tandas. I think when I was a beginner, I sort of just like wanted to float around the dance floor, and I was much more dependent on the man. I was like, just take me where you want to go. But now it's like, okay, no, I'm bringing a lot
Hmm.
more than I did. Um, so I think that these one-sided tandas happen when there's this big difference in skill level. So it might happen to teachers a lot.
Mm. Yeah, I think probably teachers are one of the biggest victims of one-sided tandas where the other person just feels great,
Yeah.
right? And they feel like something was lacking.
You
Yeah.
did mention something though about floor craft in your question. And so I want to address what you said there
Mm.
because you specifically mentioned you were in a situation that the crowd, the floor was packed. And so yeah,
Oh
oh, it
man.
was
Yeah.
bad.
Well, I mean, it was not any worse. It wasn't exceptionally bad, but it was challenging, and it only takes one or two people with big moves,
Hmm.
and that could include me, for it to get very
Hmm.
difficult.
And for listeners who are new to this concept, what basically floor craft is how couples move around the dance floor, how the whole room works together, because not only do the man and woman not want to step on each other's toes, you don't want to step on anyone else's toes. And so here's the thing, as a follower, I don't know anything about floorcraft because I am literally dancing backwards and I don't have ice in the back of my head. So like can't do anything about the floorcraft. So the man is walking forward, the woman is walking backwards. So here's the thing. Oftentimes men have whispered to me, "Oh, I'm so sorry, there's a couple in front of us." And what they don't realize is that I do not care. Like, because I'm not bothered. One, I'm not bothered if we kind of stop and like do a move in place, because for me, I'm just going to assume you're doing that because you want to do that, and
Hmm.
also as long as you protect me from anyone else, I don't care if we go sideways or, you know, I don't care where we go. I'm just focused on following you. So I could see how in your mind you'd think, "Oh my gosh, like this was this was a shit show." But like the woman,
Mm.
doesn't know that it was a shit show as long as no one has like stepped on her or kicked her. So as all she knows is that you were in this like warm, comfy embrace. Like that's it. And if you didn't take many big dramatic
Hmm.
steps, she's not necessarily expecting big dramatic steps. So oftentimes, yeah, like that's probably why, she did accept another dance from you, and it was probably just a great time for her.
Yeah, that's what you've hit upon with the forecraft. It's so interesting because oftentimes we assume how our partner perceives the dance, and it's always a lot closer to how we perceive the
Hmm.
dance. When we see that there is a limitation in front of us and we haven't moved forward in a while, we assume that our partner is bothered by it
Hmm.
too. But one of the key things I think in tango experience and building that sensitivity is to, in our minds, come to more and more of an accurate understanding of what our partner is experiencing, what makes them tick, or what they value, what they look for in a dance, and to provide that to them. Because you don't want to always dance with a construct of the other person you have in your head. You want
Yeah.
to get as close to dancing with that real person as possible.
Oh,
And so
yeah.
that's where sensitivity is so important.
Yeah. Oh man. And that's where the real magic happens. That's when it feels so good when you're so together
Mm.
then. Oh.
Allison, I'm just asking this for a friend because all of my tandas always go great. But I'm wondering, given that there are these lopsided tandas, is it possible that when you think everything goes awfully, and that it was a terrible tanda, the other person actually ends up enjoying it?
Yeah. That is a very big possibility. She probably just enjoyed dancing with you or your friend who's ever asking. It was probably good for her
Hmm.
too.
Yeah, it was my friend who was asking me this question. Said ask Allison. Joking aside, you can also ask Allison or me. If you have any questions that you want to ask us, you can write to us at letstalktango@gmail.com, tweet us at letstalktangosa, or find us on Instagram at lets_talk_tango. We look forward to hearing about your stories, questions, and thoughts for our podcast. Music used in this episode is composed by Juan D'Arienzo and is in the public domain. Other music came from Storyblock. Thank you and see you next week.